about state oppression, and it's about a despotic, totalitarian leader who targets a minority to assert his power, and uses a variety of different methods to oppress them and to target them and to oppress them. I just last week wrote an article in which I discussed the very troubling parallels between Pharaoh's targeting of Israelite babies and at the beginning of the story, and the really mass murder of children, of Gazan children, that's going on at the hands of the Israeli military. And there is very strong indication that children are not only collateral damage, but are actually being targeted. And I cite a variety of sources to that effect. It's truly horrifying, but it's not unprecedented. I think the children are always the first to bear the brunt of state violence. And in the case of the genocide in Israel, in Gaza, rather, Israel's genocide against the Gazan people, I truly believe, and I think many increasing numbers of us believe, that it is ultimately a result of an ideology and a movement called Zionism that seeks to create a Jewish majority state in this land. And if a Jewish state is predicated on a Jewish majority, that means people who are not part of that majority are a problem to be dealt with. And since 1948, over the last 70 plus years, we've seen examples of this in a variety of ways, and this genocide is just the latest and most horrifying example of that. What we're seeing in the United States, as far as the crackdown on immigrants, I think is also very resonant with the story of Passover. That those who are standing in solidarity with Palestinians, not only Palestinians, but those who are upholding their human rights, who are protesting the genocide, who are frankly just acknowledging the humanity of Palestinians, are now being targeted in this country. And immigrants are also being targeted, as we're seeing with the deportation to Venezuela to El Salvador of Venezuelan immigrants. Pharaoh's approach in the story is to target a vulnerable minority, and that is the approach that we are seeing in Trump's America. A very, very heavy-handed, obvious, clear example with complete disregard of rule of law, complete impunity. And that's what Pharaoh does in the story. Pharaoh does whatever he wants because he can, and nobody stands up to him until Moses and Miriam come along. And I think we're seeing that now in the United States. And it remains to be seen whether there will be an effective resistance of movements that will stand up to him. Right now, the universities aren't. Right now, the courts aren't. Really, it's going to be up to us, which is another lesson of the Exodus story.
Right. And, you mentioned marginalized people. And of course, we see attacks on trans people. We see attacks on people of color. We see attacks on DEI, which are pretty coded racist attacks. So we're seeing a lot of different vulnerable, marginalized communities who are at the brunt of Trump's sadistic policies. So very pharaoh-like, pharaonic.
Yes, very pharaonic. And also, I think what I try to underline is that when we read the story of the Exodus, Israelite doesn't exclusively mean Jew. I think for many Jews, they look at Passover as, well, this is the story of our liberation. But if you have a universal approach to the story, and it's not only a story that's lifted up as sacred by Jews, the civil rights movement lifted up the Exodus story in a huge way. Any targeted people, any vulnerable minority, any disenfranchised people can be Israelites, and I think that's a very, very important pedagogy for us, sacred pedagogy, when we're gathered around the Seder table and we're trying to use the story as a template for what's going on today.
So for people who are watching, who may not have ever attended a Passover, who don't necessarily know the story of Exodus, can you tell us the highlights, if you will, the important parts, and especially the parts that really do relate to the present moment?
Sure. Well, I mentioned the rise of Pharaoh and this new Pharaoh who oppresses the Israelite people and institutes these draconian policies to curb their growth because he dreads their presence in Egypt. Then we meet some people who resist Pharaoh's oppression. First, Hebrew midwives who refuse to kill newborn Israelite babies. And then a mother from the tribe of Levi who uh, refuses to turn over her baby and puts him in the Nile. He turns out to be Moses. And then there's another act of resistance. Pharaoh's daughter, actually, Pharaoh's daughter is the one who takes him from the water and saves him and raises him in the court of Egypt. And Moses grows up to reclaim his identity as an Israelite. There's a very famous episode at a burning bush, a bush that burns but is not consumed, where God sends him on a mission, a prophetic mission back to Egypt to speak truth to power, tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And which is what happens. There's a standoff between Moses, his sister Miriam, his brother Aaron, and trying to organize the Israelites to understand that this is possible, that they can actually go forth. And they eventually do. They leave Egypt. They are pursued by Pharaoh's army. The water miraculously parts before them and closes over Pharaoh's army, and they emerge in liberation on the other side. There's a lot more that happens after that, but that's usually the point in which we stop the story. That moment of liberation. But it really is a story, and as I said, a template for understanding liberation struggles and liberation movements throughout history. And many movements have been inspired by this story and used parts of this story as a way of understanding their own struggles. So you asked about the Seder on Passover, which is the spring holiday, but where we just began this last Saturday night. This signature moment of Passover is the Seder, which occurs on the first two nights of a week-long holiday. And at the Seder, as I mentioned, we tell the story. There's a book that we have called the Haggadah, which is a centuries-old book that not only tells the story, but asks questions about the story. And in particular, in the Torah, we're told children are going to ask the meaning of this holiday, and we have to explain that meaning to our children. And so the Seder really is not only telling the story, but prompting questions and about the story and discussing it and interrogating it. And as I said before, drawing out its meaning for our own lives and our own time. And there's lots of different symbols, food, usually involving food. We eat matzah for the duration of unleavened bread for the duration week long of the holiday to commemorate the bread that the Israelites ate when they left Egypt. And really, the Seder itself, this is the signature moment of Passover, where we tell the story, retell the story, and really re-experience the story.
You mentioned Zionism, and of course, what Zionists argue and Israel defenders argue is that Zionism is synonymous with being Jewish. Jewishness, Judaism is Zionism, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and of course, we see Israel using the Jewish star as a symbol of what they're doing. I mean, as they are live streaming a genocide, they claim to be doing it in the name of Jews. And we also see how disgusting the use of religion is. So how do Jews who reject that kind of redeem Judaism and also a Jewish identity that is not Zionist?
It's not easy, and I will tell you, I've spoken to many Jews who feel that because of what is going on right now, they can't bear to celebrate Passover, this festival of Jewish liberation, while a Jewish state is committing genocide against another people. I hear this every holiday. Frankly, I think there's a real crisis that this sense that Zionism has taken hegemony over an entire religion, and it is very, very challenging to be Jewish today. I want to state a serious caveat. It is as difficult as it is to be Jewish today. It is nothing like what it is to be Palestinian today, and that needs to be stated. This is not about Jewish, whatever angst Jews are feeling and diaspora Jews are feeling is absolutely secondary to what we need to be saying at the top of our lungs about what's going on in Palestine. Having said that, I think there are those who are not sure how to be Jewish, and I'm the rabbi of a congregation. We're an anti-Zionist congregation. Anti-Zionism is one of our core values that is very clearly articulated. And what I say is what I really do believe, and I don't expect everybody to feel the way I do, but I refuse to let Zionism take my religion away from me. I'm not going to let them win. I think Judaism lasted for centuries before Zionism came along in the 19th century. It is a spiritually beautiful tradition. It has been resilient enough and creative enough to evolve and change and adapt to changing times and places and multiple catastrophes throughout Jewish history. And what we're seeing now is unprecedented in terms of Jewish assault on creation of a catastrophe against another people, to be sure, this result of Zionism. But I do believe that Judaism has the wherewithal to withstand this moment as well. And in fact, I think I refuse to surrender Judaism to the Zionists who are perverting it and turning my religion into a sacrilege. So just affirming Judaism with anti-Zionism at its core, I think, is an act of resistance. And I don't expect that everybody is going to fall in along those lines. I think it's a time where every Jew is really trying to figure out where they stand on this continuum. But in our congregation, and we're a rapidly growing congregation, and we're also a part of a movement, a rapidly growing movement of anti-Zionist Jews, religious, secular, and everything in between, who are trying to reclaim their history, their heritage, their ideals, and their religion from Zionism.
One other parallel I was thinking of as we're talking is there was this piece in Haaretz. In Gaza, almost every IDF platoon keeps a human shield, a sub-army of Palestinian slaves. So, to see this country now enslaving others, where Passover talks about a time where the Israelites were the slaves. Now the people who are claiming to represent the Israelites are enslaving others is, I think, pretty sordid. So Rabbi Rosen really highlights the parallels of this story with today's political moment. And Pharaoh used fear to excuse violence, and today's Pharaoh still rules through occupation, deportation, and incarceration. While liberation lives on in union halls, in the fight for bodily autonomy, and in Gaza, and it all really reminds us of our responsibility to stand against modern day injustice.
A lot of people are probably asking themselves what exactly the alternative to Zionism is. And it's great that we have leaders like Rabbi Brant Rosen and groups like JVP to help people not only answer this question, but also to find community and safe space to talk about everything going on in the world and how to work together and stand together against the injustices we're seeing.
And more Jews every day are coming forward and saying being Jewish does not mean supporting Israel. And we're here today mainly focusing on talking about solidarity with Palestine and Mahmoud Khalil, but we're also seeing so many other injustices occurring right now through policies being implemented by the Trump administration.
Just the other week, Trump signed an executive order ending collective bargaining rights for nearly 1 million federal workers, a move that silences dissent within the federal workforce, followed by $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid, and the attacks on immigrants are escalating fast. Immigration policies have really intensified the past few months, and ICE deportations have increased.
Even here in New York City, we've seen Mayor Eric Adams reauthorize the opening of ICE at Rikers Island.
All these things we're seeing, they all reflect a broader political agenda. Consolidating power by weakening labor protections and dismantling social safety nets. It's a strategy that echoes historical fascist regimes where control is maintained by eroding democratic institutions.
It's been 37 days since Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian graduate student at Columbia University who led pro-Palestinian demonstrations on Columbia's campus last year, was abducted by ICE at his university-owned apartment here in Manhattan. Just this past Friday, a Louisiana judge ruled that Mahmoud's deportation can proceed. This decision came after Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a 2-page memo arguing that Khalil's presence in the United States, quote, would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States, end quote.
And today, another Palestinian student at Columbia was arrested at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Office in Colchester, Vermont.
And we're actually going to be talking to a professor at Columbia about that student. And we're also going to be talking to one of Mahmoud Khalil's lawyers, Shezza Abboushi Dallal. Do we have that pre-tape ready yet? No, okay. That's good because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So, Najla, you are, in addition to being a Palestinian-American actor and writer, you happen to be, not to pigeonhole you, but the daughter of Edward Said,
yes,
who, of course, is the author of Orientalism, the seminal work, was also a major spokesperson for the cause of Palestinian liberation, and a Columbia professor.
Yes.
So what is it like for you to see the kind of both protests that we're seeing at Columbia, but also the dishonesty about the nature of these protests as these like anti-Semitic, Kristallnacht 2.0s?
It's actually been one of the most overwhelming parts of everything in the last couple of years, because not only being Palestinian and American and dealing with what's happening in Gaza, on top of it, my mother's from Lebanon, my dad was Palestinian, and so both of those homes were sort of not homes that we had. And Columbia, my whole life was my home. The campus was my playground, literally. I didn't know that a campus was where people went to school. I thought it was a playground. And I never in my life, when my dad was alive, did I feel that Columbia was ever anything but behind him. And so this, on the one hand, the encampments were incredible and overwhelming, and I wish he had been there to see it. Although I do joke that he probably would have reminded everyone to go to class and read their homework. But that was incredible, and it felt so fitting and so perfect. But then everything that followed has just been so heartbreaking, so upsetting, and it feels honestly personal, because the Center for Palestine Studies was something my dad was very instrumental in starting. There's an Edward Said lecture, there's an Edward Said chair, we sold his library in his archive to Columbia. So it feels incredibly hurtful, and like someone's taking away the only thing that I've ever felt was my home, and in such a way that's so heartbreaking and so awful and so deliberately against my family and everything that we stand for. So it's been really difficult.
Yeah, and it's also, just the rank hypocrisy of all these people to be who claim to be free speech warriors. And we've seen this before, right? Like the Palestine exception.
Yeah.
But, watching these people, the Trump administration, who really are just going after people for speech. They're not even pretending. It's really awkward to watch these MAGA heads pretend that there's like a legal case.
Right.
But there isn't. It's just about speech. And something that we talk about later in one of the interviews I do with one of Mahmoud's lawyers is that the First Amendment applies to people regardless of their immigration status.
Yeah. So you are protected, and you should be allowed to say whatever you want. And I also think that protesting, obviously, is one of the most American things that you can buy. But if it's the wrong thing, it's a crime somehow. And it's terrifying, actually.
It is,
because people have reached out to me. I'm a second-generation American. I was born here. I've literally and people are worried that I'm going to get deported for whatever reason. And I can't get deported, at least as far as the law is.
Unless who knows what they do or change or break the law.
We don't know what's going to happen. So it's a little terrifying to imagine that just standing up for your own ethnicity is somehow a deportable offense.
Right.
It's like horrifying. Actually.
Yeah, and they also won't rule out deporting naturalized citizens.
Yeah. Which is also really scary, because there's so many. Naturalized citizens is probably a lot of this country.
Yeah.
So, especially from the region that we're talking about. So it's pretty frightening.
Yeah, and I do think it's one of those times, people always love to talk about, rightly so, using your privilege, but this really is a time where we have to do that, because again, who knows what will change, but as of now, you and I can't get deported. So it's like, and I know so many people who have green cards, who have been here, lived most of their lives here, who are really afraid, like in a way that, not to sound naive, and I think another conversation that's important to have is how this is in some ways a departure from the status quo, but in some ways just an acceleration of it, right?
Yeah, it's a continuation.
Because like we saw a lot of this crackdown under Biden as well.
Yes.
But it is true that this is, what's unprecedented, I think, in some ways, is the nature of it, the brazenness of it, the doing it out on the streets, rounding people up.
Right.
But also part of it is that the media is covering it in ways they haven't before. But anyway, I think it's an important thing to kind of be aware of. But we really have to be out on the streets because we, again, as of now, won't be taken away the way that other people will. So it's really important to be out there in solidarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of solidarity and the disgusting roundup of people and detention and unlawful arrests, kidnapping, we are so excited to be speaking to Shezza Abboushi Dallal, who is a staff attorney with the Clear protests at CUNY School of Law and a member of Mahmoud Khalil's legal defense team. I spoke to Shezza earlier today about Mahmoud's case and the second Palestinian Columbia student who was arrested just today. We're so excited to be speaking to Shezza Abboushi Dallal, who is a staff attorney with the Clear Project at CUNY School of Law and a member of Mahmoud Khalil's legal defense team. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Katie.
So can you give us an overview of Mahmoud's case, who he is, and how he came to be targeted, and whatever updates it's important for people to know about, because it's moving so quickly?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. And you're right, it is moving super quickly. And at the same time, Mahmoud has now spent over a month in ICE detention. And so in a way, it's also moving far too slowly for our comfort. So Mahmoud Khalil is a Palestinian man. He is a graduate student at Columbia University. He's due to graduate actually next month. And he, he grew up in Syria and was displaced. His family was displaced during the Nakba in the 1940s from Palestine into Syria. He grew up in a refugee camp there, and ultimately is somebody who has committed most of his adult life to advocating for our most vulnerable and for his people, for the Palestinian people. He was completing a graduate program at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University and was a student in the spring of 2024 when the mobilizations for Palestinian rights and against the genocide in Gaza organically sprung up at Columbia and the encampments started. And because of his sort of natural affinity for mediation and his passion and effectiveness as an advocate and an organizer, he was selected by the Columbia University encampments, by the protesters, to be a negotiator between the administration and the protesters and the faculty and all folks sort of invested in reaching a just resolution and the administration. So he came to be the victim of a very aggressive doxing campaign over the course of the past many months, but especially in the month leading up to his abduction by ICE. So aggressive in the calls for his deportation and harm to him that he actually even pled with Columbia University's administration in the days leading up to his detention for help. And ultimately, to no avail and to no assistance by Columbia University. On March 8th, he was abducted from the entrance of his home, Columbia University housing, from the side of his U.S. citizen wife, Dr. Noor Abdullah, who is, like I said, a U.S. citizen, also pregnant in her 9th month of pregnancy today, due to give birth just in a few weeks. And he was whisked off in the middle of the night across multiple state lines from New York to New Jersey and then all the way to Louisiana a forum that is conveniently favorable to the government. And he's been there, detained, and ultimately abducted from his community for more than a month now. And so we filed suit challenging the constitutionality of his detention and his targeting by the Trump administration, because it plainly violates the First Amendment protections that he has as a person in this country, even though he is a non-citizen, and as a green card holder, which he is. You know, it's plain as day that he is being targeted for his speech and his protest and his advocacy for Palestinian rights, for the Palestinian people, for their lives. And the Trump administration has made no mystery of this. They've not tried to obscure it. In fact, they have been flaunting that they are going after him for exactly that reason from day one of his abduction by their agents in the nighttime. And that's where we stand today. So we're battling out his case on multiple fronts. I think folks have seen in the news that we had some pretty major developments on one front, which is the immigration court case that he is battling in Louisiana, where they whisked him off again in the dead of the night. We had some developments on that front last week, and I can talk a little bit more about that if you'd like. And then his federal court case is in New Jersey as of today, and that case is very much alive, and we are pushing for his return to the area, for his release to his wife in time for him to be able to witness alongside his wife the birth of his first child, their first child. And ultimately, we'll continue fighting until his constitutional rights to free speech and due process are vindicated in federal court. And that's where we are today.
What can people do to support him, and not just Mahmoud, but all people who are being disenfranchised, I mean, rounded up, thrown into jail, detained, unlawfully detained? What can people do to support Mahmoud and others like him?
You know, I think people across this country are rightfully outraged and cannot accept that this can be so, that this can happen to anybody. Whether it be a non-citizen, a student visa holder, or a green card holder, or a US citizen, right? That anybody would be targeted for their organizing for Palestinian rights, for something that really should be celebrated and that resonates with a majority of Americans who feel that we should not be putting our tax money behind state-sponsored genocide in another country. And so I think we need to continue to make that clear, that this is not something that we will stand for. I think ultimately the Trump administration is banking on people being overwhelmed by the number of folks being targeted, or sort of falling into fatigue, seeing just how many people are facing consequences for their organizing, falling into silence. And we need to push back on that, understanding that today they go after non-citizens, today they go after student visa holders and green card holders, and tomorrow anybody is fair game. Anybody who is dissenting, who is daring to articulate views, daring to protest for positions that challenge the United States government and their policies and practices around the world, that they too will fall victim to whatever the Trump administration seeks to do. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us in public society, in our movements on the streets and in our schools and in our universities and in our workplaces and in the courts as well, to make sure that this just can't be so.
And thank you so much, Shezza, for all that you do. You're on the front lines. You really do make concrete differences in people's lives. And I'm sure it's very depressing at sometimes, but it must be, does it get to be inspiring also?
It's incredible to see the resilience of the clients that we're serving in this moment, and all the folks who are standing their grounds in the causes that they have spoken up for and protested for, who are enduring impossible circumstances, sort of ripped away from their communities and to far off states, sitting in ICE detention, not to make mention of the countless students and community members who are not in ICE detention but are fearing that they could be next, but nonetheless standing their ground in what they believe in and what they advocate for. I really draw immense inspiration from that, and we'll keep doing what we're doing until we see some justice.
Thank you so much, Shezza. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Mahmoud Khalil and Mohsen Mahdawi aren't the only ones. We've seen this happening to others throughout the country. Rumeysa Ozturk, a Turkish doctoral student at Tufts University who was abducted by ICE on her way home on March 25th. Badar Khan Suri, an Indian Georgetown scholar, was arrested in his Virginia home.
Tonight's Seder is being held in Federal Plaza right outside ICE headquarters to send a clear message. If you come for one, you face us all. And tonight isn't the first time we're seeing American Jews stand in solidarity with Mahmoud and all those who have been detained by ICE for speaking publicly in support of Palestine.
Just last month, Jews and allies with Jewish Voice for Peace and other organizations filled Trump Tower to demand Khalil's release. And earlier this month, Columbia University students, including Jewish students, chained themselves to the gates outside St. Paul's Chapel in Earl Hall in protest of the detention of Khalil and to demand the university disclose the names of the trustees allegedly responsible for providing Khalil's information to ICE, leading to his detention.
After tonight's Seder, we'll be showing an interview from Joe Howley, an associate professor of classics at Columbia University, who teaches literature and writes about intellectual history. Last year, he joined over a dozen Jewish faculty members in urging Columbia leadership to reject the right-wing instrumentalization of anti-Semitism charges against the Palestine Solidarity Movement and to defend the university from the MAGA agenda. And by the way, just as a reminder, if you're just tuning in, this is the Liberation Seder in the Streets. I'm Katie Halper, host of The Katie Halper Show, and this is
Najla Said,
actor and playwright and writer. And she told me I could say it, daughter of Edward Said, of the great late Edward Said. And of course, that's very relevant to what we're talking about tonight because so much of this is happening at Columbia's campus.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. And you're right now.
Yeah, I'm staying up there because I'm staying with my mom while my apartment's being renovated. And it's been a little bit, like the day that they changed themselves to the gates, I just had gone out to get a prescription. And I was like, what did I walk into?
Right.
So it's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I'm really impressed with the students. I am constantly amazed at, even despite everything that's gone on, everyone's still wearing their keffiyehs.
Yeah.
And for me, that's still so jarring because my whole life there were like 12 people in the whole world who wore keffiyehs.
Right.
Or in the Western world, and I knew them all. And now they're like hundreds of thousands of people. And, I feel a little weird at Columbia. Like, I feel like they don't want us there anymore, even though it was always my home. But the students are kind of helping me feel like
At home?
At home.
Yeah.
And it's kind of great.
Yeah, I went there that day when they had chained themselves to the gate, and it was really moving, I have to say. And also, I'm so old that these people are now kids. College students are kids to me. But I also went there with Bucky, by the way, so my little dog. So there's not just solidarity, Palestinian Jewish solidarity. We also have interspecies solidarity, which is important. Yeah, very important, yeah. And it was really so inspiring to see these kids. They had been chained. They had the chain still to show what had happened because they were removed, and they were there. These Jewish students, and one at least was wearing a yarmulke, a kippah, and a keffiyeh at the same time. And you're seeing that more and more. And there's no reason you can't. There's no reason that's a contradiction. Nope. I mean, the Israel defenders and Zionists would have you believe that it is, but it's not. And especially, the Judaism practiced by people like Brant Rosen.
Right.
And so that was really moving. And they were also really sweet. All these groups like Betar and Canary Mission are calling them hateful anti-Semites. And they're like so sweet, petting Bucky. I mean, everyone, he's so cute. Who wouldn't? But they're there in solidarity with Mahmoud Khalil saying, don't use our names. Right. Don't pretend to be doing this and our names.
Right.
And then it was really moving because then there was another student, a Palestinian American student, who was there in solidarity with the Jewish students. It was just very beautiful to see.
Yeah.
And they were, not surprisingly, forcibly removed later on in at night.
It's terrifying.
It really is, yeah.
I don't know what's going on at that school.
And, this is something that's so disturbing because this genocide could not happen without the cover of the corporate media, obviously, right? And if you watch the corporate media's coverage of the encampments, you would think that all the violence and hate speech and vitriol and slurs and racist slurs were coming from the supporters of Palestine. It's the exact opposite.
True. It's funny because I went to the encampment last year in April, and first of all, they were reading The Question of Palestine, one of my dad's books, and like having a discussion about it. As far as I could tell, at least the day that I was there, most of the people that are around me were Jewish students.
Yeah,
and
they had a Seder too,
very,
right?
Very like openly, vocally, like wearing, as you said, like a yarmulke or some sort of shirt or something that identified them as Jewish. And then I went and I watched like a CBS News clip about what was going on, and it sounded like there were mobs of angry anti-Semites, and I was not only livid, but so like, it's mind-blowing.
It really is. It's like the Twilight Zone.
It's completely not what was happening, and it's really upsetting. And sort of, I'm at an age where people my age have kids, or people that I grew up with have kids who are maybe college age, and someone I know on social media was like, my friend's daughter is afraid, and all these things that I'm like, but that's not what's happening. This is like, it's terrifying to realize that people are believing what the media is saying, which was completely untrue, and wouldn't even listen to me when I was like, I was there.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that like they present it this way when it's not even like it's an exaggeration. It's literally the inversion.
It's
like
the opposite.
The people who were violent were Israel supporters. Yep. You saw that at UCLA.
Yep.
At Columbia, they used a chemical spray on Columbia students. Yes. Even this week, I mean, you had an Israel supporter throw literally last week. A bag of feces.
I saw that
at a pro-Palestine protest, and it broke a window shield. Luckily, it didn't land on anyone. God. It's assault. And can you just imagine for 1 second if it was the reverse? No. If it was a Palestine supporter who had thrown a bag of feces on a pro-Israel protest? National news.
Everyone would be, and that person would be deported.
Deported, right. They didn't even go up to investigate. The cops didn't go up to arrest the man.
Didn't?
Oh, no, he was up there in a balcony. They didn't do anything else.
That's like a very easy way to identify
someone. I know. He literally was there. He wasn't covering his face or anything. He was totally unmasked doing it. It looks like he was filming himself. He held up an Israeli flag. I'm like, why are you doing this? This is so bad. And, that's why it's so important to speak out against this. And it's just such disgusting behavior. Yeah. And again, when everyone's obsessed with this idea of Jewish safety, well, the only Jews who are unsafe right now, and I don't want to compare it at all to the lack of safety of Arab American, Muslim American, Palestinian American students, or take away American, the non-hyphenated version, right? Like the only Jews who are remotely in danger are the ones who are critical of Israel, the anti-Zionist ones. Those are the ones getting manhandled.
Yeah, and what to me is amazing is also like there are actual anti-Semites in our government, who are sort of scapegoating Palestinian or pro-Palestinian people, and they're like, look over there, and the reality is, Elon Musk and all of these horrible...
And Steve Bannon. Isn't it insane that it's not just one person who did the Zig Heil?
No.
Anyway, well, speaking of the opposite of Zig Heil, we have some clips coming in from the JVP Liberation Seder, which is, again, happening right now, and we'll show these shortly. Oh, we're live still? Okay. So, but before we get to that, we have so much more to talk about. Again, I'm Katie Halper. This is Najla Said. Keep introducing you because I'm used to hosting a show where I introduce people, but I should just pass you the mic.
I'm Najla Said.
Yes, she is. I can vouch for that. I can say that that's true. And, it is interesting that we see... And I'm almost don't want to bring this up because there's so much centering of Jewishness.
Right.
But we are doing a Seder, right?
Yes.
So Seder, right?
Yes.
So allow me this. You're like, I'm used to indulging Jews, trust me. From the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
So
I am actually all day long.
Me too. But the idea that like a Jew like me or a person like you that we're the anti-Semites and we're creating an unsafe world for Jews, when it's like, no, actually, the people who are creating an unsafe world for Jews are the ones who are live streaming a genocide and claiming it's in the name of Jews.
Yes.
How's that going to turn out?
It's terrifying to me because I don't understand how, like, we are horrible people when, first of all, we're talking to each other. Right? So right away, we're already ahead of what anyone would think. And also, I'm not sure what the end goal of all of this is like
ethnic cleansing, extermination.
Well, that, of course. But I mean, in terms of this protecting Jewish people thing, like, what is that? I just don't understand.
It's just a shield, right?
It's just nonsense. It's just like a... And as I said, the people that they're actually in danger. It's funny when you're Palestinian, because when you're growing up, real anti-Semites kind of pull you aside and they think that you want to be down with them, and they're like, I hate Jews, and you're like, I don't hate anybody,
right?
And so,
or if you, and the thing you hate is not Judaism or Jewishness.
It's not at all.
It's what you object to is Zionism, the political
and
project.
what Zionism has done,
right?
Which is pretty much right before our eyes every day if you are tuned into the right news stations. But I think also, like, this idea that we're protecting, I just don't really understand when I feel like I'm being attacked way more.
Of course. Where are the congressional hearings? I mean, you had 3 Palestinian students in the United States shot. One of them is paralyzed. You had a Palestinian child stabbed to death. You have these people being rounded up. Where are the congressional hearings? Where is the investigation into hate crimes against Palestinians, Arab Americans? You had a woman who tried to drown 2 girls. That got like no coverage.
No, and it's frustrating because I have friends who are Jewish that connections on social media, acquaintances of people that I've known my whole life, who are almost like we're policing my rhetoric on social media because they wanted to make sure I wasn't being, even though they know me and they know I'm not anti-Semitic, they wanted to make sure that what I was saying wasn't misconstrued. So they would comment all the time just to make sure. And then, as you said, those, first of all, the little boy who was shot, he has the same name as my brother, which is not a common name, Wadia. And so that was very upsetting to me.
Stabbed to death. He was stabbed to death.
To death. Sorry.
And then the other people, it's hard. It's terrible because there was
the 3 that were shot. I know their families.
Wow.
So she's all up on my social media being like, well, anti-Semitism. And I'm like, I'm actually affected
Connected
literally by this. And you don't seem to have any worries about my feelings. And that's what's really difficult. It's really hard because it's as if, well, it's okay to be against Palestinians. And
it's totally acceptable. This like double standard and dehumanization that's so rampant, and Palestine exception we see all over the place.
It's really upsetting, and it's worse than I think part of me is so happy about all the people who've come out in the last couple of years that were never part of this before and have learned. But at the same time, I'm also like, why can't everyone else see it, and why are we doing all this stuff that is not making any sense?
It's such a clarifying moment. Like you really see people's true hearts or humanity or lack thereof. But speaking of that, humanity, let's watch some clips of the Liberation Seder.
Come for one, face us all! Come for one, face us all! Free Linka, free them all! Free Linka, free them all! Come for one, face us all! Come for one, face us all! Free Mahmoud, free them all! Free Mahmoud!
Very inspiring. That must be a friend of mine. I don't know her name. I don't know if she wants to be done. It says, Jews say stop arming Israel. And again, this is not coincidentally at, the location. Yeah, exactly. This represents because of what ICE is doing. And make sure you guys come back because we're showing some clips from the protest that's happening right now, the Liberation Seder. But Najla, Said, and I are going to continue talking, and we're also going just got picked up today. And also with Rihem Barghouti, who's one of the founders of BDS, the Boycott Divest Sanction movement. Okay, and that was some clips from the protest, very moving. And how many Seders have you been to, by the way, Najla?
Not a lot. I've
Really?
been to more, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and I like break fasts.
Okay, yeah.
But I've been to probably 2 or 3. Not a lot.
Oh, wow. You have to come to my family's
you would
next
think
year.
More.
Yeah, I would.
I think it's because it's often on like spring break time.
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
that's why. I don't know. But yeah, growing up.
Yeah. Well, if people are just tuning in, I'm Katie Halper. This is Najla Said. That was me, banging the table in enthusiasm about my name. And please do actually check out Najla's book, Looking for Palestine. It's excellent. I read it and listened to it on audio. Also, when are you putting on your play again, Palestine?
That's a good question. I don't know. I used to make quite a good living doing it at colleges, but now it seems a little bit difficult. That
right.
It's ironic because it ran off Broadway 15 years ago, and now I feel like it didn't offend anyone, but I feel like now it's a lot harder to get people to want to do it. So if anyone would like a performance of a wonderful play,
yeah, it is.
It's a solo play. And
it's funny. It's moving. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I turned it into the book, and then it's read in a bunch of schools, which I really appreciate.
Great.
But it's a lot harder to get, Oprah to read your book when it's about Palestine.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And tomorrow at the Katie Halper Show, which is at youtube.com/the Katie Halper Show, for people who are watching through another stream, just want to announce that we're going to have joining us Alex Kane, who has a really important piece at Jewish Currents that's about who's funding the Canary Mission.
Oh, I want to know this.
Yeah. So make sure you tune in. And, the Canary Mission and Betar are these basically disgusting, thuggish, censorious, cowardly organizations that go after students. But they don't have to be students. But
I think Canary Mission is
focuses
academic.
on so students and professors. Yeah, I kind of feel like an underachiever because I'm not on it.
I always think that.
Yeah,
way.
what's wrong with us?
I've checked it and been like, why am I not?
I need a Canary Mission, Katie Halper, Google alert, and one for Najla Said also. Yeah, what's going on?
We need to be more
hated by them. Yeah, and Betar is just like, but Betar makes Canary Mission look normal.
Yeah, Betar is really scary to me.
Yeah,
I don't know. Do you know? So does this article go into who's behind Betar?
No, Canary Mission. But I'm going to do a show on Betar also. And, Betar was one of their leaders was this guy named Ross Glick, who was charged and arrested for revenge porn. This is the type of leadership this organization has.
I keep hearing a lot about certain subject matters in terms of this country. But
yeah. I think he's American. But he's a very, in fact, Brace Belden, who hosts the TrueAnon podcast, had a really great, scary interaction with him where he was like harassing someone. Ross Glick was, and then Brace was trying to defend the person, and then he said some like, I'm not even going to say it, but Ross Glick said some really inappropriate stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really.
Yeah, he seems like a not.
Like a creep.
Yeah.
Who would know? Who would have thunk that someone who does revenge porn was a creep?
Right, exactly.
You'd never see that coming.
You never would have thunk it.
But what's so disgusting about these organizations is that they themselves are anonymous.
Yeah,
so
that's
they
what
wouldn't
I was
be
gonna say.
doing
They're
what they
going
were doing.
after
Exactly.
people, but like nobody knows who they are.
Right.
That's terrifying.
Right. So if you want to harass people, you should have to face live the your convictions, like pay the price of your convictions. If you want to harass people, fine, but you should be fair game for people to go outside your house non-violently, obviously, and but you should be able to get
I think that's also what makes them much more scary because you're like, who is watching
exactly
me? Who's listening to me and who is.
And it's asymmetrical warfare. Yeah. And then these same people who try to ruin people's lives complain when people want to wear masks or not reveal their identity. But we have some more clips, so let's go to the clips. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the Liberation Seder.
The ceaseless and senseless slaughter of Palestinians will cease.
This is Liberation Seder that's being organized by several groups, including Jewish Voice for Peace.
And that our friends Mahmoud,
Who's this? Oh, the lawyer?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've known him
and
since.
all the others.
Okay, so this is one of Mahmoud's lawyers, right?
Will be with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mahmoud, we got your back!
All right, so
Mahmoud, we got your back!
that's the protest saying that, the
And
Seder,
I'm so
but we have
honored
it
to
there.
be here
Yeah.
for this Liberation Seder. It is an honor for us to gather and to remind the entire world that we, the people, remain united for liberation!
And I know that some of the speakers booked for tonight, that sounds weird, booked, I don't know, who are participating tonight, include Nan Golden, the amazing artist.
I
She's
met
so
her once
amazing.
at the UN. We did this event together, and she just turned to me and goes, "I love Palestine."
Oh my God,
And
that's
I always
so
remember that. I
cute.
was
That's
like,
so
"I love
sweet.
you."
That's really great. Yeah, and she's she's actually, they made an amazing documentary about
Yeah.
her struggle against basically the Sackler family, which is fascinating. But Deborah Winger, the great actor Deborah Winger.
Yes. Who I also had the opportunity to meet.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, she really is. So it's really, very moving to see this. And it gives you hope because so much takes away hope. Like there's so much depressing news. It's really hard to maintain hope. And, it's also like, if you follow what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza, but not just Gaza, I mean the West Bank,
Totally.
right? Which is one of the many things that shows you what liars the Israeli government are.
Yes.
Because not that we ever believed it, but the
Right.
whole claim that this is about Hamas, October 7th, we know that's not true. But it's just so obvious when they're also genociding people in the West Bank.
Yes.
Right. So.
But you know what? The more, as hard as it is to keep every day, like realizing how many people are dying and how much more trauma is going on and how you just want it to end for the people of Gaza, the only way that I can stay positive is to think about how many people in the last year and a half have, like when I see the protests with hundreds of thousands of people in like London and all over the world, it's almost like it's almost like feeling like you were bullied your whole childhood and now everyone is standing with you. Yeah. Like in some teen movie where everyone like stands up to the bully for you. And so that I think can't be denied, as hard as it is every day to get through. Like the amount of people who've joined our cause, which is so obviously righteous. Right. Is really overwhelming and kind of great. It's I have to keep going back to it consciously because it's so disheartening every day, especially with all the stuff in this country now. Right. But it's been pretty special to see how many, and even there were always anti-Zionist Jews or anti-occupation Jews or whatever they called themselves. But I think the amount of Jewish people
it's growing,
is really incredible. Yeah. It's really incredible.
And, again, it's so easy to feel hopeless, and I'm not pretending that it's sufficient, but it is, I saw the documentary, The Encampments. Yeah, and
so did I.
It's which is great. And there, that journalist in Gaza, Bizwan, she gets teary-eyed when she talks about the encampments. And then you see the children in Gaza, and they have, like, signs and saying thank you. And honestly, it's like the least we can do, right, is something that gives people there a sense of something.
Yeah, and I think particularly for Palestinians, even diaspora Palestinian Americans, the idea of being made invisible in any context is so triggering for us that when people just acknowledge us, it's huge. And I know that sounds sort of pathetic, but it's bigger than people know. Right.
It is. It's a terrible low bar, but that we live in a world where it stands out to acknowledge the humanity of Palestinians.
Yeah. Right. And personally, for so much of my life, I've been in situations where I wasn't able to do that, or people weren't doing that. And I feel a little bit more safe in the world. Yeah. Weirdly. Right. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Well, part of it is, I think, is like what, when you're live streaming a genocide in a way that has not happened before, the combination of what they're doing and added to that the ease of cell phone footage and stuff, I think has made it so some people who really, I think we couldn't have imagined being politically where they are now have moved there.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's been really, so many people, I had my birthday recently, and there were a lot of people who wished me happy birthday that I was surprised, because, you're not really connected to them. You don't talk all the time. And then I just literally thought that all these people didn't like me anymore.
Yeah, right.
And then I got all these happy birthday wishes from them, and I was like, wow, I have a little bit more faith in humanity, because it's been a lot, and I've lost a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the amount of people that have shown me the other side is kind of great too.
Yeah.
So.
What else do you think? I mean, one of the, I think, important myths about that's worth shattering is this myth that, it goes without say for people watching this,
right, that,
being pro-Palestine is somehow anti-Semitic. And then you have also some people, I think, who their analysis, it's not anti-Semitic per se, but it conflates things. It's understandable, yes, right? And it's not ironic. One of the things that's so fascinating is that I feel like some of the people who are the most astute when it comes to analyzing anti-Semitism are Palestinian people.
Yes, that is true.
Ranging from your father to, today, Noor Erakat,
that's very
Assad
true.
Abu Khalil, Mouin Rabbani,
Well, and the essence of anti-Semitism in general is the same thing as
right,
Orientalism, really,
right,
I think, which is from my dad's book, which is a sort of vague idea of what these people are and a stereotype of how they behave and what they think. And it's all based in the same made-up fantasy of those other people.
Right.
And that's also why I get so angry that people are falling for this, calling people who are pro-Palestine anti-Semitic, is because, as I said, there are real anti-Semites.
Right.
And they are...
And you're trivializing it.
Yeah. And as I was saying earlier, every time I've ever encountered an anti-Semite, it's a white person who has pulled me aside, and other Palestinians can probably say the same thing. And they sort of sorry, my alarm's going.
It's a symbol for a wake-up call. And I mentioned Assad Abu Khalil. He's not Palestinian. He's Lebanese.
Yes. But
he's a big ally of Palestine, of course,
right,
and has been, like Palestinians, at the receiving end of Israeli brutality.
Yes. And so I think what happens is that people don't realize that, now I forgot. So that these anti-Semites will come up to you and say all this stuff, and you have to say, no, I don't believe that. It's very angering, because you're not at all. It's not even in your brain.
Don't
taint
taint us
think
with
about
your hate.
Judaism,
Right, exactly.
The religion when I think about Israel. I think about a government and a military.
Yeah, and as I don't know if it was in the part that we played, but as Brant Rosen points out, Zionism, there were religious forms of Zionism, there certainly are today, but the founders of modern-day Zionism were atheists. So...
Yep. That's part of it too.
Anyway, well, we got more footage from the streets, from this Liberation Seder in the streets.
Guide us to the path of enlightenment, of those you have blessed, of those who incur no anger and who have not gone astray. Amen, amen, ashe. Shalom alaikum, y'all. Say it back. Walaikum shalom. Yes, God. We have a lot of difference. We do. But we have so much more in common with one another than we have difference. In fact, what we have in common is difference. Isn't that cute? But the only way that we can see it and see us and see each other is if we love each other. And the only way we can be it is if we see each other. The prayer doesn't count for the time, by the way. They can't divide us by our differences if our differences do not set us apart. May our differences instead challenge us to be closer to one another for the love of understanding. Why be divided by fear of difference and of what we don't understand when we are safer and happier as allies in understanding? May we lean into what we love in common and give ourselves permission to innovate the way we relate to one another and ourselves. My faith is not just something I identify as. It is the practice of what I believe in. My love for you is my religion, and mercy is my God. My faith is not only about believing in something much greater, it is about believing in myself and in others too. If I believe in myself enough, I can make my bed. Haha. I may even be able to wash my dishes. Hello. If I believe in myself for real, I could possibly even do my laundry. Hallelujah. Can I get an amen? Amen. And then maybe even, God willing, after doing my laundry, I could tidy up my whole bedroom all by myself. Yes. But if I can take care of myself because I believe in myself, well, surely I can take care of others. I can take care of those who are in my care. And if I can take care of those who are in my care, we can take care of each other. Amen. Amen. Our beliefs generally influence what we understand to be right or wrong, and they drive our intentions. We all know that harming children is not. Is there such thing as a child with whom it is okay to harm? No. That is the status quo, and that is what we believe in, and that is the faith that we have in our responsibility to protect. We all know that harming children is in every way unacceptable, but some of us choose to ignore what they know is unacceptable because either they are too afraid and cowardly to stand up for what they believe in, or they believe that sensitivity and empathy weakens their will. Well, one must ask, what is your will if it is weakened by care? Elon Musk said something on Twitter. He said, the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. And then he asked for it afterward. Because somebody set his Tesla on fire. When a person with much power and influence believes in empathy, when a person with much power and influence believes that empathy is a weakness, it is proof that their agenda must not be very loving. It is also proof that our love for one another is our most powerful weapon against them. Our love for one another, alhamdulillah, it is so powerful that it actually makes me want to laugh and smile in their faces. Our love is so powerful that it indeed weakens them and reveals how they are none but a flock of silly gooses. It brings me great joy to know that these people are none but silly gooses, but it also brings much concern to me that these silly gooses are in power. We are being ran by a cabinet of silly goose. We will not be dominated by Pharaoh Silly Goose and his musky tyrant. Nothing on earth that is good for us can be weakened by our love. Nothing weakened by love is worthy. There are too many of us here who know what it is like not to be welcomed where they live and are instead persecuted because they exist. May we welcome one another home one day to live in everlasting hospitality, far, far away from hostility. We know much better than they do. We know much better than they do. We can build a better government and country in a day while they take many to destroy one person. Free Mahmoud Khalil. Sharing this with each other and unifying that is so fun. It is so fulfilling to share love with you all. I learn so much from other people, and it makes me love them more. Doesn't it make you love them more? When you learn more about people, something that you didn't know before. Christians, we just want to love our Creator and be loved by our Creator in peace. We cannot allow them to abuse our faith and use it to mislead us to hate one another and ourselves. This trial we are in, it is all about love, baby. Get into it, for real, for real. I know it's corny for some of us, but honey, love is in. Just look at what happens when it isn't. It is proof for all those with eyes to see and ears to hear and hearts to feel. Love is the most valuable resource that we have. And it is also the only one that they cannot take. So are we courageous enough to care for one another in a way that we never have before? Are we? To not be afraid of one another, but to join together in social and spiritual solidarity. Are we ready for that? Alhamdulillah. God is like, yes, God. Looking down at us like, yes, God. That's right. But will the Jews see themselves in the Muslims? Will the Jews see the Will the Muslims see themselves in the Jews? Will Christians see themselves in anybody? Just kidding. Hallelujah. Will you see the pain of your ancestors in the eyes of trans and queer people? Will trans and queer people see the pain of not having a home or family in the eyes of children in Gaza? And to the believers among us, will you keep God all for yourself, ousting everyone else from the mosque, the church? Why? Feels like not to be welcome. Feels like not to be welcome. May we be generous, patient, and merciful with children at all costs.
That was Indya Moore at Foley Square. And we're going to be going back to that Seder, in Liberation Seder, shortly. But again, if you're just tuning in, I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Najla Said.
And Najla Said is an amazing writer and actor. And I'm the host of The Katie Halper Show, which you can see every Tuesday at 7 p.m. YouTube.com/The Katie Halper Show. But we are very excited to be doing this for the Liberation Seder. And we are not only going to be showing more of that Seder in the streets, but we're also going to be playing some really cool interviews that I was able to record earlier on in the day. One is with Joe Howley, who is an associate professor of classics at Columbia University. And he is, reports back on what has happened to these Columbia students, both of whom he knows. And also I got to speak to Riham Bargouti, who is one of the founders of BDS, Boycott Divest Sanction. And, we've been talking, Najla and I, about Columbia University, which is near and dear to your heart, although it's complicated now, obviously, right? But your father was, my mom took a course with your dad.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, because she was an English PhD at Columbia.
He remembered everyone who took his classes. It was crazy.
And we were saying earlier, like a lot of people don't know that Edward Said was actually in comparative literature, right?
He was complet, and his specialty was 19th century British literature.
Right.
So like Jane Austen and George Eliot and that stuff. It's kind of wild. Nobody thinks that, but
right. Think of him as like poli-sci or sociology or history.
But I think part of what that was he made a name for himself as a literary critic, and then he felt comfortable speaking out for Palestine because he had established himself
legitimacy. Right,
So,
which again is a messed up thing, but whatever. It's like how the world works.
Yes, it is, especially then.
And he had, I guess, one of his mentees, proteges, is Rashid Halidi.
Yeah, I mean they were colleagues, and Rashid's a bit younger, so he was a bit of a mentor. But Rashid is a historian, so it's a little bit
right. But he's the chair of.
So when my father, when they decided that they were going to establish a chair in my dad's name at Columbia, my father wanted the first person to hold the chair to be Rashid, and he called him and he kept yelling at him on the phone and yelling at his wife, "Are you coming? When are you coming?" And they eventually came, thankfully. Good, Rashid has been incredible at Columbia.
And he, of course, is the author of the seminal book, The 100 Years War on Palestine, which there's a photo of Joe Biden holding it, which obviously he used it for like kindling or didn't open it or read it ironically or something, but but we're really excited, and we think it's really great. I'm not a very religious person. Like I was raised as very secular, but I do. One of the things I was talking about was Rabbi Brant Rosen, which is not in the clip. It will be at the Katie Halper show, youtube.com/the Katie Halper show. It will be there eventually. But one thing that's interesting is that I'm used to thinking, and this is kind of ignorance, but it's also understandable. Like I think often of secular Jews as the more progressive ones and religious less. But we are seeing people, showing up who wear yarmulkes and kippas. And I also spent a lot of my, life kind of, I think, like affirming Jewishness that isn't religious and how like you can be Jewish and not be religious. And now for the first time I find myself actually, and again, I have no skin in the game, but I find myself defending Judaism as a religion in itself because I don't want it to be able to be weaponized by Israel.
Right. It's so interesting. I as I was saying earlier, I've done my solo show at colleges probably since like 2008 or 9. And at the beginning, it was always Palestinian students that invited me, and they were like SJP and then as the years went on, it would be SJP, but like the head of it was a student with a yarmulke. And so I'd be like, what's going on?
That's Students for Justice in Palestine for people.
Students for Justice in Palestine. And so I think you're absolutely right. It's changing, and that's always jarring for me. And every time I see someone who's, in some way, obviously a religious Jew in my audience, I get scared. And then I'm always pleasantly surprised because obviously they're there because they're more progressive. But yeah, that's definitely a sort of newer thing that I hadn't really thought of before. But then again, Zionism, so many Zionists are not.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the people I grew up with didn't have, they certainly didn't have bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs, and they never went to synagogue.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when you're talking about Israel, they're like the first ones to defend it.
Right.
So
Theodore Herzl was not religious at all. Yeah. And there was actually another interesting thing. I mean, is that there's actually some contempt from people like Zionists have contempt for diaspora Jews. There's that whole thing where it's like diaspora Jews went to the slaughter lambs, and they're old school. And Herzl says some really offensive stuff about these people, and so does Ben Gurion. And, you know, I'm also, I don't know if I've told you this, I'm working on a documentary about Holocaust survivors who are protesting what Israel's doing.
Oh, great.
Who are saying, like, never again, for real, never again is now, not in our name.
Which, again, you would think these would be the authorities that we would all listen to on what a genocide is, but apparently, no.
Yeah, anyway, so our reporters are live at the Liberation Seder, and so we're going to cut to them a little bit, but remember, don't go anywhere, because not only we're going to show you that, but we also have great interviews to play when you come back.
We break with misogyny. We break with $20 billion of our tax money being sent to murder children. We break with Zionism. We break with Israeli bonds that prop this obscenity up. We break with the lie that says we are only for ourselves. And we break with all that keeps us separate and apart from each other. We break with the systems of empire and domination that tell us that there's nothing wrong here. We don't need to be woke. We break with the stories that prevent our creativity. We break with the stories that limit us from what's possible. We let the broken pieces of our breaking crumble. We offer them to the earth. We break what needs to be broken so that all of us, not some of us, all of us are free. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Esther. Zionism has not only created suffering for Palestinians, but also for Mizrahi and Sephardi Jews like myself, who have our own histories of living side by side with Arab Muslims and Christians for generations. As a Mizrahi Jew, I know that my liberation is intricately bound up with Palestinian liberation. Here to share the beautiful tradition of Mimuna with us, celebrated the night after Passover ends, are my friends from the New York City Mimuna planning team, coming up on the 20th.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice.
I'm Emily. We're members of the JVP caucus for Jews of Southwest Asian and North African descent. As Arab Jews, we stand in solidarity with our Palestinian siblings fighting against vicious Israeli oppression from the river to the sea.
At my Syrian grandparents' Seder, we did a tradition before telling the story of Passover. Each person would hold the afikomen portion of the matzah over their shoulder and say, Misharotam, Serurot, Besimlotam, Al Shichmam, Ubnei Israel Asu Kidbar Moshe. Then we would ask 3 questions in Arabic that we will ask each other tonight. Min Jaya, where are you coming from?
My ancestors were Jews from Tunisia and consider Arabs as our enemy when we ourselves are Arab.
This tradition of Jews and Muslims and Christians in the Arab world being in community together was not unique to Tunisia. It existed across the region. In Morocco, it was called Mimuna. In Syria, it was Leil Hametz.
Lawen Nurayeh, where are you going?
We are going to end US-funded genocide. We are going to Palestinian liberation and their return to the land. We are going to strengthen solidarity.
Solidarity also means showing up both at JVP events and also for the events of our Palestinian-led organizations in this city too.
If you want to do something right now, you can contribute to the fundraiser for our sold-out Mimuna event this weekend. We are fundraising for Rawa, a Palestinian feminist grassroots organization. If you take out your phone, go ahead. You can type in Rawa, RAWA.PS/Mimuna, MIMOUNA, and donate to on-the-ground community initiatives for displaced people in Gaza and the West Bank. Shu Zawadtek, what are your provisions?
In these times of genocide perpetrated by our own government and in the face of brazen state repression, what
siblings? We will bring these communal provisions with us as our most marginalized community members are targeted by our fascist government.
As Arab Jews, we also bring with us the knowledge that things don't have to be like this. Jews and Muslims and many other groups have lived in peace together for a lot longer than the Israeli state has existed. And the ties between us will continue to exist after that state is no more. History is on our side. Free Palestine!
Next up, we are fortunate to have a beautiful musical offering from the one and only the Resistance Revival Chorus.
Free
Passover Seder, if not a little bit long, you know? So thanks for sticking with us. I am honored next to bring up Rabbi Abby Stein to give a blessing for the prophet Miriam. She's representing JVP, JFRED, IfNotNow, and Rabbis for Ceasefire. Rabbi Abby Stein.
Kit Yom Tov, Chag Sameach. As Sivan said, my name is Abby Stein. I'm a rabbi here in New York City. I'm a member of the JVP Rabbinical Council. I've been a member of Rabbis for Ceasefire since its foundation, and I'm here today on behalf of Rabbis for Ceasefire as well as my political home here in New York, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice. My laundry list is not done, give me a second. I'm also a longtime member of IfNotNow and Shoresh, which are Israeli anti-Zionists here in the US. Before I start, I just want to mention, in addition to everything we're doing today on, what I believe is Thursday, the 17th, JFresh is hosting our Seder in the Street, which is going to be in Midtown. Go to our social media, to our website, sign up, we'll see you there. I want to talk about Miriam, the cup of Miriam, which is just a cup of water. A tradition that has been added relatively recently, but is very important to so many of us as a feminist tradition. I will say as a queer person, as a queer tradition, but most importantly right now, I think about water, and I think for everyone here, I don't have to tell you what water means to Palestine and to Palestinians, and what occupied water, for the lack of a better term, looks like. I spent this summer in Palestine for a month and saw how that looks like, how you can tell whether something is a settlement or something is an actual Palestinian home based on whether they have access to national water or if they have to collect their own water. So water really is a symbol of occupation and oppression, and for us, it is a symbol of liberation. At the same time, water, Miriam, feminism, and queer liberation is too often used to control people, whether it is the Israeli government and intelligence services threatening gay and lesbian and LGBTQ Palestinians to expose them, so to speak, if they don't cooperate, or just using us, trans Jews and LGBTQ Jews, as an excuse why they keep killing people, while I have so many queer Palestinian friends who, before we can talk about liberation, just want to live. So right now, as we celebrate Pesach together, as we keep water, as we keep Miriam, as we keep our feminist foremothers, as we keep our queer elders throughout history in mind, this is what Pesach is. Liberation for all, whether it is land, water, people, and each and every one of us at home and abroad. Thank you.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Please join us in giving a warm welcome to our dear comrade from the Palestinian Youth Movement, who has been leading this movement for a free Palestine every single day, Miriam.
Thank you so much for having me today. Happy Passover. I want to speak about the reality that we are faced with in the world today. The reality that's faced by the Palestinian people today. What the Palestinian people are facing is perhaps the most devastating assault on our struggle across all fronts. And what I mean by that is not just in Gaza, although in Gaza it is being felt most acutely and most horrifically. In Gaza, where over 100 people have been murdered each day by US-funded Israeli bombs. where there are literally no more hospitals, and where journalists are burned alive for speaking about the truth. This is the reality in Gaza. And in the West Bank, the reality is tens of thousands of people displaced from Jenin, from refugee camps, an attempt at annexation of the West Bank. And all those who struggle with the Palestinian people are facing this same assault. In Yemen, the US is bombing people for doing what they must do under international law, for stepping in under conditions of genocide. And here, I don't need to remind us, every day people are being abducted off the streets for speaking out against genocide. This is the reality that the Palestinian people have been resisting for over 100 years. This is the reality that all of us here have been standing against for at least a year and a half, but I know well over that for most of us. And this is the reality that our government, that the Trump administration is going to do anything to protect. So in these dark times, I like to look to our Palestinian prisoners, who are a beacon of strength and hope. Palestinian prisoners in Palestine, but also here, like Mahmoud Khalil. One of our prisoners, Barghouti, he's the longest serving political prisoner. He's been in Zionist prisons for over 45 years now. Something he said is that they denied us our freedom, but they did not kill our determination to break our chains. Nothing has killed the determination of the Palestinian people to break their chains. Nothing ever will. Nothing will kill it for us here, so long as we are looking towards dignity, freedom, liberation, and justice for all. Thank you so much, and I'll see you at the next action.
By longtime Rutgers professor and active leader in faculty and staff for justice in Palestine. Give it up for David Letwin.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Greetings, comrades, friends, family. It's inspiring and uplifting to share this Passover space of resistance with you in this, the 77th year of the ongoing Nakba against the Palestinian people. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Jews for Palestinian Right of Return and Labor for Palestine. I'm also here as a longtime university educator and as a member of the Rutgers Adjunct Faculty Union. I think we all know that words by themselves don't meet the urgent demands of the moment we are in. In fact, words lose their meaning when enablers of the Israeli genocide in Palestine can willfully misrepresent surging campus anti-Zionism as a so-called crisis of anti-Semitism. Or when white nationalist electeds can, with a straight face, claim that their campaign to abduct and terrorize students and blast higher education to bits is being conducted in the name of protecting Jewish people. Shame. So I urge us tonight to consider actions in addition to words. Amplifying the 2025 May Day call from the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions in Gaza, 2 labor unions in the United States. The National Labor for Palestine Network strongly encourages labor bodies and union members across the country, which no doubt many of you are, right? To take one or more of the following actions on and leading up to May 1st. Withhold labor. organize a labor contingent for Palestine, or otherwise amplify demands to stop the genocide, hold a teach-in or a moment of silence, post a group photo with flags, signs, keffiyehs, buttons, and other symbols of Palestinian solidarity, leaflet and demonstrate at a weapons plant, military facility, or other complicit institutions, and storm social media with hashtag, an injury to Palestine is an injury to all, hands off our students, stop arming Israel, BDS, and from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you, and see you all in the streets again soon, including the April 17th National Day of Action Higher Ed 3 p.m. march that starts in Washington Square Park and is coming right here to Foley Square. Solidarity.
Thank you. I'm honored to bring up our final speaker for this evening's Seder. Please give it up for JVP Action's political director, a tireless fighter for justice, Beth Miller. Come for one, face us all. 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 I'm here tonight, like so many of you, in heartbreak and in rage. But also I'm here in determination. Because I can see what's going on as clearly as any of you can. The Trump administration thinks that if they come first for those they believe are most vulnerable, our immigrant neighbors, our student activists who are boldly speaking out to stop a genocide, they think that the rest of us will be too scared to stand up. They think that if they bomb hospitals, if they bomb children, we will be too scared to speak out. They have made a terrible miscalculation. Because we refuse to be scared into silence. We will not be bowed into compliance. We will not do what we are told. If you come for one of us, you face us all. The work ahead is long and it's difficult, but we are clear. We are here to defeat fascism and end a genocide, and that starts with refusing to be silent. We won't allow fear to overtake us. We will hold on to each other, and we will refuse to comply, and we will build something new together. We will break apart the systems where weapons manufacturers get rich off of genocide, where lobby groups like AIPAC bully people and beat the drums of war, where hospitals are bombed and refugee camps are burned, and where our beloved organizers are abducted from their homes for speaking out. We will build something new together. And I'm going to end by paraphrasing my dear Zaidi, my grandfather, another leftist Jew, who said that for dreamers who are trying to build a new world rooted in freedom, we should remember, it is not that our ideals will be realized today, tomorrow, or the next day, but that we should be working to make the world move toward that dream today, tomorrow, and every day. We are in this for the long haul, and we will keep showing up and building together until we all have freedom.
Justice, you say how? End the siege on Gaza now! We want justice, you say how? End the siege on Gaza now! We want justice, you say how? Bring the food home now! We are by your side. We will not comply, Mahmoud. We are by your side. We will not comply, Mahmoud. We are by your side. We will not comply, Mahmoud. We are by your side.
Our tradition teaches that Nachshon stepped into the Red Sea first. We do not and cannot do this alone. Like Nachshon, we move together. We are undertaking a historic task, leaving Zionism, a racist and colonial ideology that claims to represent and advocate for all Jews. Instead, we move towards each other, towards the most prophetic parts of our tradition, towards our communities, towards our movements, insisting that our educational, religious, cultural, and political institutions refuse to comply with fascism and refuse to be complicit in the oppression of the Palestinian people.
Passover is the season of liberation. When we talk about liberation, we mean for everyone. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. My great uncle and my great grandfather were disappeared in the middle of the night in Germany by Nazis, not unlike Mahmoud Khalil. And what their stories taught me was that when we speak of never again, it must mean never again for anyone. Genocide and ethnic cleansing look like. And we are seeing it in Gaza and the West Bank. We are seeing the intimidation and repression of those who are speaking out here in the US, and I refuse to allow my family history and trauma to be justified, to be used to be justified the US and Israel's genocide in Palestine. We cannot stand idly by as the false protection of Jews is used by our government to bring in fascism and silence dissent. Fighting for the liberation of Palestinians is not anti-Semitic, and the misuse of the term is dangerous for all of us. My Judaism, my family's history in the Holocaust, this holiday of Pesach demands that we stand up for all who are oppressed. Never again is now, never again for anyone. Free, free Palestine. Thank you all so much for coming tonight and being in collective action with us. Seeing all of you here today at this Liberation Seder is really, truly beautiful. Your courage to show up is how this movement will continue to grow. We're going to do one final chant, and then we ask that everyone disperse in pairs to keep each other safe. Next year, in liberation. From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Najla Said.
And what you just saw was the Liberation Seder at Foley Square, where we heard from Linda Sarsour, Ramzi Qassem, Queen Jean, Indya Moore, Esther Farmer, Rabbi Abby, Miriam from Palestinian Youth Movement, David Letwin, and Beth Miller. Everyone was gathered to say, stop arming Israel, end Israel's genocide in Gaza, free Palestine, free political prisoners held by ICE, stop the attacks on immigrants, trans people, and students. It was pretty inspiring.
It was.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing to see all those people still out there.
Yep. And we are now going to play another interview that I was able to do. Well, actually, we're not going to play another interview I was able to do. Not quite yet. We're going to get to that shortly. But we're just going to talk more about, what we're seeing right now on the streets and in Gaza and in Palestine, because as we said earlier, it's one of the big lies that Israel likes to spout is that this is about Hamas, this is about October 7th. We already know that that's not true, but another way that that's clear is the way that they are attacking people, brutalizing people in the West Bank.
Yeah, and always have been.
Right, and always have been, right, because this really never was about October 7th, and I think that's clearer and clearer to some people who I think believed it at the beginning are finally seeing through it, just because the civilian death toll is just too high to trick anyone into thinking this is about Hamas or about security.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I don't know how anyone can still believe that, but it's so hard to follow the news. Like every day there's another outrage, another tragedy. That's either ignored by the media or misrepresented by the media. A lot of use, of course, of like the passive voice. We see that a lot. A lot of things are like allegedly, alleged or claimed by, and
even though there's like mountains of video,
documentation,
everywhere, it's maddening. It's so heartbreaking too to just be like, look,
right? Like how many more?
And the beheaded babies thing,
right?
And we have
seen every accusation is a confession, right? Yeah.
And I've seen at least 3 beheaded babies, not by choice,
right?
Because they feed and not a word about them, and yet we are so outraged by the possibility of it. Having happened in Israel, it's very hurtful, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I often wonder what it's like to be like part of that group that's so dehumanized, which you are obviously. I feel awkward even saying that, but I always wonder what it's like to, when I have on Palestinian guests, what it's like to be just so like implicitly or sometimes explicitly, but implicitly dehumanized. And
it's
like,
a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me personally, it manifested in like personal ways with having low self-esteem, and then everyone being like, why do you have such low self? And I'm like, because the entire world is telling me that I'm worthless. Right. So there's that element, which I think is a little more, that's more personal. I don't think that happens to everyone. Some people become more defiant. Right. But that is what happened to me. And then the other part where it's not even considered. Like, everyone is so careful about what they say about everyone else. Right. And yet it's never even a thought that they might offend you. And I've said this recently, like growing up, my friends would be like, I went to Israel, I'm going to Israel. And I'm like, did you ever think that that's insensitive to say to someone who's Palestinian? No, of course not. Right. So it's hard. And you have to constantly learn how to override in your brain so you don't believe it, because it's really
it's easy to
internalize, so part of the world that you start to somehow feel that you're like less than, and it's not a fun feeling.
I was hoping that you could also like share with people who haven't read your book, Looking for Palestine, or seen your play Palestine, or don't know your story. Like, can you talk about your family's journey from where they come from, which is a complicated journey to here. Yeah.
So my dad was born in Palestine in 1935. He was from a Palestinian family, 2 Palestinian parents.
And for people just tuning in, your dad is Edward Said.
And his family was actually Anglican, so Christian. My grandfather had come to America in 1911-ish. Because he was running away from being conscripted in the Ottoman army. So he had happened to come here and become a citizen. And then he moved back to Palestine, got married, had my dad, my 4 aunts, and then they were all kicked out of their home. But because he had this U.S. citizenship, he had a business, so they moved to Egypt. And then when my dad was 14, he was kicked out of school, and my dad sent him to America to go to school.
His dad.
His dad, sorry.
Yeah.
My grandfather sent my dad to school in America, and so my father was here from the age of 15 on as this sort of American who was really Palestinian. So I grew up in New York, and I went to private school, and the first private school I went to was very WASPy, which was weird. But I was Episcopalian, so I kind of fit in. And then, but I lived on the west side of Manhattan, which is
wrong side of the tracks,
which is the wrong side of the tracks. Also, the more Jewish part of town, so everyone thought I was Jewish. Then I went to a different high school where everyone was Jewish,
and ironically was named Trinity, which is ironic because it was it was founded by what?
It was founded as the church, the school for the church, the choir boys of the Trinity Church, which is down here. In the 1700s, and then over time it just became a really good school. So it was mostly Jewish by the time I was there, and so that was weird because that was when I sort of became more comfortable with being Palestinian and Lebanese. My mom's Lebanese, but it's interesting because so much of my high school was around Ashkenazi Jewish culture, and so to the point where I would speak Yiddish and had spent more time at my friends' Jewish holiday gatherings than at my own family. But then after October 7th, a lot of that has changed. So I'm possibly thinking of writing some more about that particular moment.
Well, it's interesting because in your book, you talk about how there was like a 9/11 moment, right? Where that shaped, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but it had a big impact on your...
So I think it's also generational. Like for me, 9/11 I was 26 or 27, and it was the moment where I couldn't sort of pretend to be white anymore, because up until that point, Arab American wasn't really a thing, or Muslim or whatever. So after that point, I wasn't like trying to be white girl. I was more of a minority in the eyes of whatever, the world or this country. And so that was the first shift, and then I started doing more work about being Arab and looking in, and had an Arab American theater company and stuff, which is where my plate came from. But I think that my parents always talked about 1967 being the real moment that for their generation that changed everything. And I think for my generation and people younger than me, October 7th has that. I mean, I think 9/11 was a moment, but it was more general. It was Muslims. It was very like
the Arab,
amorphous, dark people.
Exactly.
This has been very, very specific. And after October 7th, there were a bunch of people that I've known for years that I don't really understand because they must have known who I was and what. But I wasn't supposed to say it out loud, I think. And so I lost a lot of friends. So I'm thinking of writing more about that because that moment was really a very much no turning back kind of moment for a lot of us in terms of people that had, I guess, put up with us as long as we didn't talk too much about Palestine.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and also I think it's a lot easier to be pro-Palestine when there isn't an October 7th. I'm not defending it.
No,
I'm just
you know what I
mean. Like it's like, well, okay, how deep is your Palestine solidarity?
Right.
Like, are you able to withstand something like this, which should not undermine your Palestinian solidarity, because Palestinians don't stop being human because of October 7th, and it's because of they're human that October 7th happened.
Yes,
right?
exactly. And I think that also to reduce us to that when there are plenty of things that have been done by Israel or Zionist armies or Zionist militias over the years.
It's not even remotely comparable. I mean, almost all of the Palestinian resistance happens to be nonviolent. And yet somehow
seems to know that. Yeah. Right. And that there's like democratic parties, and it's very clear that there's a story that needs to be told here that is basically made up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, speaking of Colombia, where you your kind of birthplace, and of course your father's, the institution with which your father was so connected, we're going to play an interview that I did earlier with Joseph Howley, and he is. Let's see, can we get the document up there so I can? Joseph Howley is an associate professor of classics at Columbia University who teaches literature and writes about intellectual history. And my vision is not very good, which is why I was squinting. But let's go to Joseph. It's a great interview.
like if you're in
So excited to be speaking to Joseph Howley, who is an associate professor of classics at Columbia University, where he teaches literature and writes about intellectual history. Last year, he joined more than a dozen Jewish faculty members in urging Columbia leadership to reject the right-wing instrumentalization of anti-Semitism charges against the Palestine Solidarity Movement and to defend the university from the MAGA agenda. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's great to be talking to you.
You too. Another Columbia student, Mohsen Mahdawi, was just apprehended by Homeland Security while at an immigration appointment to become a citizen. He was recently outed by the same people, Betar, that outed Mahmoud Khalil and others. So what is the atmosphere like at Columbia right now?
Yeah, we were actually having a faculty rally outside with a bunch of researchers and doctors from our medical campus calling on the university to fight back against the Trump attacks when this news broke. And I read the news out to the crowd through the megaphone, and there was like a cry of pain from the crowd. So many people here know Mohsen. I was standing where I remember him standing last year at a different protest. Everyone knows that Mohsen is someone who speaks out for peace and justice and collective liberation. He said things like, "We're against anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism is a form of injustice, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." This is we are
Sounds really
here.
terrorist and scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's frightening. And, we're already in a situation where, students are speaking up less in class, where international students are afraid to, leave their dorms or come to campus, where my colleagues, other professors who are on visas or green cards, are having friends escort them to and from work and home. We were already here all feeling pretty frightened.
What can you tell us about the way he was outed? Betar, what you know about that so far at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, Betar is like a right-wing extremist militant group that is all of a sudden punching above its weight with their social media campaign alongside Canary Mission. Canary Mission, one of these websites that, like, if you're in the movement, you know them well, and a lot of people who aren't in the movement are suddenly having to learn about them because all of a sudden, it seems like the way the State Department is working is someone can just post some racist allegation about you on social media, and then goons in masks are dragging you off the street. So there's a lot we could say about this dynamic here. It's not great to be governed by people who are like too online and just reading whatever slander they find online and putting it straight into State Department memos or legal filings or whatever. It's also worth remembering that there was reporting in The Intercept just a few weeks ago on these WhatsApp groups of, like, at our university, of Columbia alumni, including faculty and students and parents, that were coordinating specifically to dox and denounce student protesters or other students who they thought were protesters on social media to get them targeted for deportation. And lo and behold, here it is happening. So this is not just about the Trump administration finding people to pick on. It's about people, some of whom are in our own community, who've been singling out people associated with the Palestine movement to have them targeted for the Trump deportation machine.
Tell us more about the role Columbia is playing in this. How are they enabling this crackdown, whether it comes to Mohsen or Mahmoud Khalil?
This is something that we're all still trying to get a lot of information about, and it's not entirely clear. Just a couple days before Mahmoud Khalil was taken, he had written to university leadership asking for protection because he knew he was being targeted and got no response. And some of his friends tell me that his student ID card access to campus was actually revoked with no notice just days before he was taken. There's been some reporting on how he was identified, how Mahmoud was identified, in which people have claimed that someone around the university's board of trustees was actually involved in reporting him to the government. Obviously that's being denied, but there hasn't really been full reporting on that. my understanding is that the university is following the law, which, kind of cuts both ways, right? It means you have to have a signed judicial warrant to let ICE agents on campus, right? It means that we're only giving the government, this is what I'm told, we're only giving the government the bare minimum of information that we're required to under the law. But, I think the really frightening thing, Katie, is that we're in a situation now where university leadership's primary goal seems to be to never make any public statements or commitments that might seem like a defiance of the regime. So that's why we don't all even know what the university is and isn't doing. They could be doing, their absolute hardest work to protect students in the face of this, and we wouldn't know about it.
Speaking of which, what are your thoughts on the claims of anti-Semitism on Columbia's campus, which, according to, Israel Defenders, has infected the pro-Palestine movement, claims about Jewish safety? And how do you feel as a Jewish person about Betar and Canary Mission and the Israeli government claiming to act on our behalf?
Yeah, the pro-Israel extreme right has spent decades trying to convince everybody that if you speak on behalf of the Palestinian cause, that's somehow anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. And we saw that same logic, being deployed at and around our university last year. I think it's disgraceful. I think it's insulting. And, about these groups that you've mentioned, in my upbringing as a Jewish person, I quickly became aware that there were many other kinds of Jewish people and ways to be Jewish in the world, and that even if I didn't agree with all of them, we were all Jews and Jewish. And that's, I have to say that's clearly not a view that's widely held. I've been attacked as a, fake Jew. I'm sure you have as well for this or that commitment, right? But I hold very firm to my commitment that, like, even the Jewish people with whom we disagree or who hate us, like, they still count as Jewish people. Having said that, I think that groups like Canary Mission and Beitar are betrayals of really everything that I understand Jewishness and history and heritage and values to be about. It's Passover right now, right? I just had a Seder with my kids the other day. We talked about the story that when the Red Sea swallowed up Pharaoh's soldiers and the angels rejoiced, God said, "But are they not also the work of my hand?" Right? That, like, liberation means liberation for all, and that even oppressors need to be liberated. So I look at them and I see, I see fascism and I see authoritarianism and I see a kind of paramilitary movement for the social media age that's threatening. And I'm glad everyone is sort of waking up to the threat that they pose. But you also asked me about these charges of anti-Semitism on our campus around the solidarity movement. And I think it's really important that we say, first of all, that the fact of pro-Palestine protests does not by itself mean the presence of anti-Semitism, right? Most of the vast majority of what's been happening on this campus and campuses like it around the country has been kids sleeping in tents to protest, the shredding of civilians with American bombs. It's just that simple. Now, when we start looking at, like, real incidents of anti-Jewish harassment and discrimination and prejudice, we can tell that some of this stuff has been happening. Some of it's been happening off campus, out on Broadway, outside our gates. Some of it's been perpetrated by non-Columbia people, but near our campus. And some of it has happened on our campus and been perpetrated by members of our community. But then there are a lot of incidents that people don't want to talk about, right? That's been the harassment of our anti-Zionist and anti-war Jewish students by the pro-Israel, anti-protest crowd. And that's also been ugly, despicable treatment. And particularly, there's been harassment and bigotry towards Palestinian, Muslim, and Arab members of our community. And that has also gone unreported. That has also not gotten task forces to take care of it or federal enforcement actions about it. The fact of the matter is, like, there has been a devastating war going on for the last year and a half. And when you have wars, especially wars against civilian populations, you get protests. Now, when you have wars that are waged in the name of religious identity and national identity, and then you have a international campus community with people who come from or identify those different identities, then yeah, you are going to get kinds of protest, and you are going to get kinds of discrimination or harassment. And I think if institutions or politicians were really worried about that kind of climate stuff, then they'd be telling a story about what do we do about harassment in the context of war and sectarian conflict and ethnic conflict? That's not the story that the politicians and the ADL and the Board of Trustees have been willing to tell. I think we also have to bear in mind two things about the realities of anti-Semitism. One is that when the government of Israel slaughters civilians, and they do so, in the name of Jews, or, wrapped in our holiest symbols, when they bulldoze schools and mosques and then bulldoze the Star of David into the ground, like that drives anti-Semitism around the world, and it's disgusting to me. And the other thing to say is that the Trump agenda right now, which is disassembling major institutions of civil society in this country in the purported name of Jews and Jewish safety, that's also going to drive anti-Semitism, right? We're being rushed through this authoritarian agenda in the name of Jews, and that's not going to be good for any of us.
Can you talk about what Trump's demands of Colombia have been, how much Colombia has capitulated to them, and what effect that has on education at Colombia, but also around the country and possibly around the world?
Yeah, this list of demands that the federal government sent my university is really bizarre and frightening. It includes things that don't really make a lot of sense, like comprehensive admissions reform. We're not even sure what that's about. It included things that were contradictory, like they were demanding that we punish students more, but then they're also demanding that we abolish the body that was punishing students exactly as they requested. I think for a lot of us, one of the most troubling demands was that the Department of Middle Eastern Studies be placed into academic receivership. So to be clear, what that means is that the federal government is asserting its right to come into any private university and direct how individual units or departments, or and direct how individual subjects are taught. And that's the kind of thing that happens in like authoritarian illiberal regimes. Now, I want to say two things about this. One, this list of demands from the federal government tracks very closely with a list of demands that was circulated on our campus just a few weeks before by the anti-protest, anti-Palestine faculty and community. And I think that the worst kept secret here is that there is some very close level of collaboration between the anti-protest movement around our campus and the federal government's attack. Individual assertions or allegations or slanders made by anti-protest or pro-Israel activists here have made it into congressional reports or into, law enforcement grilling of our administrators, right? So there's some direct pipeline here, and we don't fully understand that. The second thing to say is that you asked me how much has the university capitulated. Well, we still don't even know, because a few weeks ago, our leadership made this statement about all the things they said they were going to do, and those things are either exactly what the feds wanted, put in different terms, or they're not at all what the feds wanted. And then all of a sudden, our president was out of a job. And now we have a president who comes out of the Board of Trustees. And now there's rumors about new things that the federal government wants to do. And no one is saying anything to any of us about what's actually going on. But meanwhile, just today, news broke that Harvard University has sent a letter to the federal government explaining that they are in compliance with the law and they will not be putting up with the government's demands and harassment. Just last week, the president of Princeton told the New York Times that they were not going to be putting up with this kind of unlawful and illiberal attack on universities. So, this is a national threat. I mean, the threat is basically that right-wing politicians can come into universities and dictate how any subject is taught. They're starting with Middle East studies and Israel-Palestine, but they've also been cutting funding for scientific research projects that they deem too woke, right? We're really not that far away from the government coming back and saying, now you have to restructure your program on women, gender, and sexuality. Now you have to close down your climate school. Now you can't employ anyone who does research on vaccines. Like, that's already where we are, right? And I think everyone can see that who actually believes in academia and works in academia. And I've been really heartened to see other Ivy League universities standing up. I've been heartened to see the faculty at major state research universities standing up and calling on their leadership to stand up. And it's actually starting to get pretty lonely out here. We're starting to wonder why Columbia is the only one of the Ivies that can't seem to find the courage to resist authoritarianism. You know, when we go up for tenure here and we're being evaluated, whether we get to keep our jobs or get promoted, we're told, you know, at Columbia, you have to be as good as the faculty at Harvard and at Princeton. And I think now all of a sudden we're here wondering if we could ask our leaders, you know, why they can't show the same, you know, degree of courage and leadership as the leadership at Harvard and Princeton.
Thank you so much, Joseph.
Thank you so much, Kate.
And that was Joseph Howley, professor at Columbia University. That was a fascinating interview, lots of disturbing information, sadly. And who knows by the time, like later on this week, if there'll be another student abducted. So we're going to play our final interview of the night. And this one is with Riham Barghouti, who is a founding member of the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement. And again, if you're just tuning in, this has been the Liberation Seder stream. I'm Katie Halper, and this is
Najla Said.
And Najla Said is a very talented actor and writer. And of course, you can check out The Katie Halper Show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show, including tomorrow, when I will have on Alex Kane talking about his article, which looks into who is funding the Canary Mission. Without any further ado, here is Riham Barghouti. Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. You're a founding member of the Boycott, Divest, and Sanctions movement, BDS. How do you see its relevance and impact to the present moment?
Yeah, so I think that it is one of the most effective ways right now the international community can show impactful solidarity with Palestinians, because it really goes to isolating Israel and placing pressure on Israel that's real among the international community. But BDS is a long-term project, right? It's something that takes a lot of time and energy in order to develop campaigns and carry out those campaigns and have them have an impact. So we have been working for the past 20 years. July 9th would be the 20th anniversary, actually, of the BDS movement in its current configuration. And while we've seen real impact in terms of businesses leaving, you know, Israeli contracts, while we've seen impacts on artists refusing to perform in Israel and joining various different types of organizations promoting a boycott, a cultural boycott, an academic boycott of Israel, we are not yet seeing this reflect on the reality on the ground, which is Palestinians still being killed in unbelievable numbers with this ongoing genocide that's happening in Palestine. And if anything, it's an escalation of the really horrendous atrocities that Israel is carrying out against the Palestinian population.
Can you tell us more about your work with Amplify Palestine and the Palestinian Youth Movement and what these organizations do?
Yeah, so I work with Amplify Palestine, which was a project that was launched by Adala New York, the campaign for the boycott of Israel, back in 2015. And it was calling on artists to kind of sign on to the pledge for cultural boycott, but also to start developing culture in support of Palestine and to amplify Palestinian voices. So we have since put out two boycott, divestment, and sanctions, what we call BDS mixtapes, which is artists kind of singing in support and to promote the BDS movement. We are planning to put out our third volume in this summer. And it's really an opportunity for cultural workers to kind of create art in support of Palestine and in support of the BDS movement. And we, in addition to that, have done activities like helping members of IfNotNow Palestinian dance troupe carry out workshops in the US. We had our first workshop tour last October. We plan to do another workshop tour this coming October. So also supporting Palestinian organizing and Palestinian cultural work on the ground.
Can you tell me about your own personal relationship to Palestine and your family's relationship to Palestine?
Yeah, my family came here. Unfortunately, my parents left during the 1967 war, actually, and were not able to be counted as part of the census. So we were never given Palestinian ID cards. During the so-called peace process, my father actually returned to Palestine, and he was able to, after 30 years of not being able to go there, he was able to go there and able to get an identification card for both me and him. So I lived in Palestine for 10 years. And it's this, at the time it was during the second Intifada, which at the time we thought was one of the most horrendous Israeli attacks on Palestinian towns and villages that had happened, in addition to attacks on Gaza and the West Bank. Obviously nothing in comparison to what's taking place today. But that really in 2001, 2002 is what spurred us to really start working and organizing around boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which, like I said, the call came out in 2005, and that's what I've been working on ever since, even when I returned to the United States, because I believe in this kind of, it's a very legitimate kind of way for people, ethical, morally right way for people to support Palestinians, but also to try to limit the extent of our complicity in what's taking place. Because I, like all other Americans, I'm paying taxes, and it's my tax dollars that are being used to kill Palestinians. So it's one of the few ways that we can actually say, I want to offset the damage that each one of us individually is doing by doing this and attempting to kind of support the BDS movement in any way possible.
And how can people support the movement through creative and cultural resistance?
One of the really inspiring things that has happened during the recent Israeli genocide is the number of artists and cultural workers that have begun to organize in their spheres of influence. So you have, film workers for Palestine, theater workers for ceasefire, dancers for Palestine, writers against the war on Gaza, groups that are working in their particular cultural arenas. So, and trying to put pressure on whether it's cultural institutions. So you have, I think at this point, over 200 cultural institutions in the US that have signed on to the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott, but also the development of an amazing amount of cultural activities, actions, events that individuals, groups are carrying out. And I think that there are many ways from attending these various events, kind of amplifying the Palestine solidarity movement, amplifying Palestinian voices, but at the same time, creating these amazing artistic activities like the BDS mixtape and other events that have been happening. And or the number of movies that are taking place. There's so many different ways that people can do it. On an individual basis, kind of understanding what the BDS movement, organizing within your particular community, with your local theater or with your local cultural institution to kind of get them to sign on to the PACB call to really continue to create this pressure. And then also making sure to follow up on campaigns calling for artists to boycott Israel to ensure that they don't perform and reinforce this kind of cover that Israel likes to use using culture. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys doing this.
Yes, thank you so much for joining. That was Rihem Bargouti, one of the founders of the Boycott, Divest, Sanction movement, and that was our interview with her. And if you're just tuning in, I again am Katie Halper.
I'm Najla Said.
And we have been hosting the Liberation Seder, organized by Jewish Voice for Peace. And tonight we brought together thousands to Federal Plaza on Passover to say, stop arming Israel, end Israel's genocide in Gaza, free Palestine. Throughout history, Jews have adapted the Passover Seder to meet urgent political conditions. Today, we are faced with the destruction of Gaza and genocide of the Palestinians and the disappearing of pro-Palestine students and academics in the U.S. We would like to acknowledge the core organizing groups for today's Liberation Seder. Jewish Voice for Peace, IfNotNow, Shoresh, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, Rabbis for Ceasefire. And that was, it was a really, I think, inspiring thing to watch. Yeah,
it was really beautiful to watch.
Yeah,
and
it
see
was.
all those people. It's crazy to me to see people that I don't know who are
Who care about this
pro-Palestine.
stuff? Yeah,
So it's really fun.
It's a sign of the times. It is,
yeah.
one of the silver linings of the awful thing that we are witnessing. But we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, you can check out my show, The Katie Halper Show, at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. Make sure you check out Najla's work. She is a great writer, and she has a book called Looking for Palestine and a play called Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's about it. And I guess the last thing I would say is thank you and good night and free Palestine.
Free Palestine.